My parents were preppers. Hello and welcome. Welcome to Input English. So what's a prepper? What's that mean? Years ago in the United States, we experienced what is now referred to as the Cold War. That is, there was tension between the Soviet Union and Western countries. And so in the United States, when I was young, there was a great deal of concern about the potential for nuclear war. Young families had to sort this out in their head. They had to understand, like any threat, what does it mean and how can we respond to it? In this era, the threat of nuclear war seemed high enough that some people started making preparations to deal with the aftermath of such a nuclear exchange if it were to occur. So my parents looked into it and they made a decision to put a fallout shelter in the backyard. There were many options. They chose a steel fallout shelter that would be put into the ground and covered with concrete and dirt. These were being sold by various companies in the area, and after they had done their research, they selected one which was delivered to the house. A crew of workmen came to the backyard, dug a very deep hole, and put this fallout shelter deep in the ground. They covered it with concrete and then with dirt. This fallout shelter had a skylight, which was a tube with a square cross section. And the tube came up to ground level and had a thick leaded glass top. This glass was right at the level of the grass. It had a large round opening with a lid, and that's the entrance and exit for the fallout shelter. Inside this round opening, there was a spiral staircase that went down into the fallout shelter. About 2 feet away from that opening, there was a pipe that came up and then formed a U shape at the top. And this was an exhaust port to exhaust air out of the fallout shelter. On the other side, there was another pipe coming up out of the ground, and it had a filter housing on it, and that was the air intake. The filter on the top side was just for dust, and then down inside the fallout shelter, there was a second air filter to get finer material out and prevent radiation from being brought in with fresh air. This fallout shelter was equipped with a way of pumping water from groundwater, and it was fitted with a rudimentary septic tank for human waste. It had a pump to push wastewater out, and it had a pump to bring fresh water in. It also had electricity hooked to it from the house by an underground cable. Inside the fallout shelter, there was one room. It was 12 feet long, 8 feet wide, and 7 feet tall. There were 6 bunk beds, 3 on each wall. There was 1 sink, 1 toilet. That was it. The original plan was to set this fallout shelter up so that if there was a nuclear war, our family could go into the fallout shelter and be protected until it was safe to come back out. A radiation detector was stored in the fallout shelter. There were tablets to decontaminate the drinking water. Fortunately, over time, the perception of the threat decreased. And my parents never really fully outfitted this fallout shelter to be used. As time passed, it became pretty clear to them that we would not be spending time as a family taking refuge in this shelter. Many years later, it was repurposed. My dad and I used it as a photographic darkroom. There was no place as dark as the fallout shelter. It was in that fallout shelter that he taught me how to develop photographic negatives and how to make photographic prints using an enlarger and the chemicals needed for that process. He taught me the craft of fine photography. He and I made a lot of pictures, developed a lot of film, and printed a lot of pictures together in that darkroom. The family home where I grew up that had this fallout shelter in the backyard is no longer owned by the family. It was sold a number of years ago, so I don't know the status of the fallout shelter. There would be no reason to maintain it now. So I started this episode with the term prepper, and that is a slang term, a term of art being used for people who perceive a threat to normal life in society, and so people sometimes prepare for great calamity. They may store food and supplies. They may store firearms and ammunition. So when someone uses the term prepper, referring to a person, what they're saying is that person perceives that Armageddon may be in the future and they choose to prepare for that calamity. In that sense, my parents indeed were preppers. They were only preppers for a relatively short period of time. And as the perceived threat changed, they moved on. That's the end of this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I invite comments below. And I hope you join us in future videos. See you soon.